Epic disclosures on Daystar. We have Julie Royce in the building. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the beginning of the last days. My name is Laura-Lynn Tyler Thompson, and just to correct that, Julie Royce is in the building by video, okay? That would be epic to be sitting talking to each other. Just love her. A lot to discuss since the drop last night that I had many more emails from people whose marriages have really suffered after they had counseling with Doug Weiss, and their stories very powerful. And we're going to kind of look into that a little bit, talk about Doug Weiss today, what we know, what we don't, and also get to Julie Royce's latest drop. I think it's dropping later today, and trust me, riveting. Okay, so you know that I love to open my dad's Bible. He was amazing. And he's marked this word up from one end to the other. And I love him. I miss him. And I love to read from his Bible every single day. And I hope that you're preparing a Bible that you're leaving for your children so that they will, they'll appreciate you more when you're gone. I don't know how that works, but it does. Okay, so Hosea 10, verse 12. My dad has underlined this in a very black, thick pen. Sow to yourselves in righteousness. Reap in mercy. Break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord till he comes and rains righteousness upon you. Wow. Sow to yourself in righteousness. I think it means don't plant seeds of deception. I'd like to, before we bring Julie Royce on, I'd like to play that clip of 50 Shades of Dr. Doug. Take a look.
Can you believe that? Can you even believe that you could stop masturbating? I mean, if you're watching this, you probably have tried. But I've been free for over 30 years. And I have taught thousands of men and women how to stop masturbating today.
So when you're having sex, have your eyes open. It'll really freak your wife out. Okay?
It's not about how fast you thrust them. Let me give you some basic principles. Eyes open. Look at your wife during sex. You want to stay sexually healthy. You want your penis to be strong the rest of your life. You want your vagina to be strong. And also where it doesn't go into that oval shape, but stays in that circle shape so that it feels more like that young vagina.
We can all have a great sex life. Christ died so we could have great sex. I want a sex language, Jesus!
So what is
I want to speak in sex language.
You must you're speaking all five of them. Just go for it.
Say, God made me sexual. Yes, he did. It's so good that he did. Thank you, Jesus, for my sexuality. Go ahead. Thank you, Jesus, for my sex. Oh, yes. When was the last time you thanked Jesus for your sexuality? Been a while, huh?
Adultery, abandonment, abuse, and even addiction. The 4 A's is what we call them. In the conversation that I had with him, I was very quickly convinced that this was a very painful, devastating, damaging relationship that he was in, and that he had a biblical reason for leaving. When they choose to abandon you or abuse you, and they will not stop, then there comes a period of time that God gives us grace to leave so that we can have a future.
Lisa's my buddy. She's my friend and co-partner in business and everything we do. And I invest in that.
Now, what's your favorite things about Lisa?
Oh, she's got the purest heart I've ever met. I mean, it's just, she loves and serves with excellence. Everything she does with excellence. She's an amazing individual, creativity-wise. She's an amazing mom, and she runs our company. We just bought a 20,000 square foot building for a counseling center. That's a lot. She runs it like a home. I mean, people just like her because she's just got this kind of like, how can I help you? Heart. That's just easy.
That is so much like my Johnny.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so that wonderful woman that he speaks of so very kindly. He was able to leave her after 30 years. And I've had someone write me who is a designated person. I'm not going to give them away, but they basically, and I did bring this up in yesterday's broadcast, I'll quickly just say that they said they've known him in the past and they believe that what he falls under is this cluster B. So it's histrionic personality disorder, in which it's a mental health condition marked by unstable emotions, a distorted self-image, and an overwhelming desire to be noticed. People with HPD often behave dramatically or inappropriately to get attention. And so I obviously have no designation to be able to diagnose people like that. I'm only presenting you information from those who are completely shocked and appalled, not only by Doug Weiss's behavior today, but by his behavior many years ago. We are going to have the amazing Julie Royce come on, and just before, take a look at this clip of her work.
This is the thing that's interesting to me, is apparently your mother is omnipresent because she's on 3 different floors at one time, right? This is what I'm noticing. So
my grandson was talking about his sister had the beach view and he had the city view. And so Pete was holding his 1-year-old child. And he said to my grandson, well, show me your city view. So they went up the steps. I was in the room, heard this.
pause. Where is your son?
3rd floor, in his bunk.
Downstairs, Susie said to my son, go check on her, thinking that's kind of weird, like, and the way she said it.
So this entire time that this is happening, your mother is in the basement. She's describing events that are happening on the main floor, which is how peculiar it is when Susie comes to get you, Jonathan.
And so my son went running up the stairs, and when he did, he saw that his daughter was putting on the bathing suit, and Pete was standing there holding a 1-year-old baby, and my 8-year-old grandson was there, and they were looking out the window at the city view.
When she's describing things that happened in the room, that's where Pete is, your daughter is. She's not even there. So she doesn't know if Pete's looking out the window or not looking out the window, because she's not even there. She's 2 floors away.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, I love it. All right. Would you please welcome Julie Royce to the program? And Julie, you're absolutely amazing. I love the way that you dissect a story to get down to the bottom of it. And I have been riveted lately with your interviews with Jonathan and Susie, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But thank you for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Laura-Lynn. And I've really appreciated your work over the past several weeks, and really appreciate the stand that you took when you realized what was really going on with Jonathan and Susie and Daystar and Joni. And it took guts to do what you did and to pull your program. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. I just had to do that part of it. You know, I'm new to this battle in this kind of realm. I've been standing up to other agendas, woke agendas, you might say. And I have faced several battles and been maligned. One thing I have seen is that there's people that will really not appreciate your work because of all the exposing that you do. And I keep saying, well, what exactly, what do you have a problem with that she's exposing, that you keep putting on, invisibility, what the people that are leading the country, the great religious leaders, you bring personal accountability to organizations and people who should be behaving in a godly manner. What is wrong with that, since we don't really do it very well in the church ourselves?
No, we don't. And usually I'm the last resort. They don't come to me first. They come to me after they've gone to, say, the leaders in their organization, after they've gone to their elder boards, or they've gone to the trustees or the board of directors, and they've been gaslit. They've been often bullied into trying to sign an NDA or something like that. They've been silenced. And so they come to me again as a last resort. And what's so interesting to me is that I feel like so many Christians, the reason that they respond negatively is because, and I've said this before, I feel like in our churches, people are being groomed to stay silent in the face of evil happening by their leadership, because they're constantly told things like Matthew 18, which is really about personal offenses, right? Like if somebody takes your lawnmower and wrecks it, then you have an offense against them and you should go one-on-one. And if this person's a believer, then, if they don't hear you after you go one-on-one, then you take a friend. And then if they won't hear that friend, then you bring them to the whole church and expose, this thing that they've done wrong. But it's not a prescription for dealing with leadership. It's certainly not a prescription for dealing with sexual abuse within the church. I mean, do we expect somebody who was sexually abused by someone to go to them one-on-one? I mean, that's insane. And do we expect, for example, in situations where you have a Christian leader who is very powerful, for somebody who's very vulnerable, who already has been often abused or taken advantage of, to go to that person one-on-one? Again, these are for personal offenses, but people have been taught over and over, and I find especially in spiritually abusive churches, it's spoken of a lot. We know at IHOP KC, for example, that was spoken of a lot, the Matthew 18. Very few people are taught. In fact, I've only heard one sermon in my entire life on 1 Timothy 5:20, which is, when you have a sinning elder, you should expose him before all, so that others may stand in fear. And we've forgotten about this. We've forgotten about, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. I mean, this is what Scripture says. And so I've always felt this way, like I'm called to this work. Truth, God is truth. Truth is never the enemy of God. Truth is always something that God upholds, something he embraces. And we as his church, we as his children should embrace the truth as well. So sometimes we don't like the truth. Sometimes, that line from the movie, you can't handle the truth. I think we're in that situation a lot of times, but I believe that we're actually seeing, I've said this before, for the past several years, that we are experiencing a move of God to purify his church. And discipline is never, ever pleasant for the person who's being disciplined, but it is right. It is good. And that's what I believe God is doing. And it's humbling to have a part in that. But I think we all have a part in that, because, again, it's not just us who report. It's how it's received by the public. And it's whether we continue to support ministries where there's clearly corruption going on. There's clearly abuse going on.
That is so much a part of it, that we would pull what we can. Our discipline would be that we would take funds from a place of corruption and put them elsewhere, definitely. And I feel like it's flipping the tables. I keep having this coming, to me, that Jesus flipped the tables in front of the synagogue. It wasn't in front of the adulterers. He flipped the tables. His anger came to those who were of the house of God, who were doing things that should not be done anywhere near the house of God. And what is the accountability? If one of these mega churches has a pastor that is in sexual impropriety, and you try to tell, first of all, you're the one silenced. Everyone protects this. They don't want to believe it, and or they don't want it exposed because, well, the tithing will leave. And so where would they go? And all of a sudden, the keyboard prophets, as I would like to call them, the prophets who see, the discerners of the times, they are the Julie Royces, they are myself, they are the different ones who take to the keyboard and to the podcast and say, we're not going to have it. And by the way, we're now able to get more views than your church on Sunday morning. And all of a sudden, the person who's got the secret and the person who's being abused has the power.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful thing about the internet. It used to be that the only way to expose some of this stuff is to go through the gatekeepers, right? I mean, it was to go through the magazines, the Christian media. And honestly, the Christian media forever has been doing PR for these people. They've got their back, right? So we couldn't get a lot of these stories out. And now we're seeing, because we have these venues, because there's someone that people can come to where they know, one, we understand spiritual abuse, we understand how these power dynamics work, and it's a safe place where it's not like we're going to do our job. We're going to check out what you have to say. We're professional journalists. That's what we do. We have to check it out. But if you're telling the truth and you come to us with this story, we're going to use a platform to get this information out. And again, we can bypass the gatekeepers. And this is the beautiful thing, because I used to be very much involved in, I worked for the Moody Bible Institute. I was on Moody Radio. And I saw how what I call the evangelical industrial complex, how everybody is scratching each other's backs. They all have some sort of financial tie to each other. And I saw how that worked, and it should work, Laura-Lynn, it should work that we hold each other accountable, right? Like when we see something wrong, we say, hey, and obviously we have influence. And so you would hope that, one organization, when they see another megachurch pastor or leader of an organization doing something wrong, they say, hey, this isn't right, and hold them accountable. But we've seen the exact opposite, where instead they provide cover for them. And often because they're getting funding from them, they all get funding from each other. The publishing companies. I mean, when I was on radio, somebody published a book, we'd have them on our program. And of course, that works out really well for them, because now we're platforming their book, and then they can sell more books. And of course, the publishers love us for that. And then the conferences love us for that, because, they're doing the conferences, and it's all, and it doesn't have to be evil, but the way that it's working today is there's way too much money involved, and these interests, special interests, that people, instead of calling each other to righteousness, they're beholden to each other. And so this is where now, we get all of our funding, 100% grassroots funding. I'm beholden to nobody within the evangelical industrial complex. I'm beholden to God. I'm beholden to the people who believe in our mission, and that is to report the truth and restore the church. And so that's what we're doing. And it's what you're doing. And I'm just so glad that there's independent voices out there that are directly serving God and serving the public.
Amen. And we aim to have the truth told. I'm a little bit surprised at the silence right now. I'm surprised that so much damage is being done to Daystar's reputation because of the truth. It's not the lies. Their lies are being exposed, and the truth is coming out. And people are saying, the House of Cards, Babylon, Daystar Babylon is falling. And these are the words of podcasters that are out there right now. And all of this is happening. But the people, maybe you would say, okay, men of God, women of God, the prophets. I love Amanda Grace. Amanda Grace is speaking quite openly. She is very burdened by all of this. She's a neat lady. But, many people are just not willing to step into this because, well, you know what? They might never be a guest on Daystar again. Should she survive this, they will never be allowed to have a show on there if they speak a word or come, So they can't even navigate gently to do this because they're just too afraid. And, in Revelations, it talks about those who won't make it to heaven. And on that list, it's not the murderers first. It's not the adulterers first. It's not the liars. It's the cowards.
Yep.
And we're seeing
Yep,
that typically.
I've only had one other person say that to me, and it was Kay Arthur. And she, when I was reporting, and she knew some of the players, and she said exactly to me, where is this person? Where is this person? Why aren't they speaking? And I said, Kay, I don't know. I don't know, because they care more about their reputation. They care more about, about having, not burning a bridge. They care more about their career. And she brought that exact thing up. And she said, and this is where I feel like in evangelicalism, we have completely forgotten that courage is required to follow the Lord. Like, you cannot be a moral person and be a coward. You cannot be a moral person just because you abstain from sex outside of marriage and don't drink and don't smoke and don't do all these things. Your religion is worthless. It is worthless if you're not standing and taking a stand for righteousness when God tells you to do it. And it's really when the rubber meets the road. And I see all of these people on Daystar right now who are cowards. They're afraid to speak. And we know that people are leaving because we've heard, and they won't even verify it to us. But they're going to leave, and I think they're going to slink away quietly. And when you say you're surprised by the silence, I wish I was surprised by the silence, Laura-Lynn, but I'm not. When I reported on John MacArthur, the supposed greatest, expositor of the 20th century or 21st century, nobody. I mean, I had so much documentation that he not only had covered for a pedophile, but had punished his wife, excommunicated her publicly in front of the whole church. This is a woman that was abused and had her children abused and her children, strangled. And then he excommunicates her because she won't take an abuser back into her home. And then several years later, when he's sent to prison, he's still in prison serving for sexually molesting his kids. John MacArthur has never owned what he did for that. Never. And nobody, none of his circle has ever held him accountable for that. They just keep, putting him at the conferences, getting him at the Getty Sing. It disgusts me. And I think it disgusts God when we have this kind of stuff going on. God cares for the vulnerable. God cares for the woman who's abused. God cares for the children who are abused. And we have to care for them too. That's God's heart. And yet we get up and these pastors and these preachers get up and they say all these beautiful words and they don't care. They don't care for the people. And someday they're going to stand before God and they're going to give an account for what they did. And right now they're going to give an account for being silent. I hope some of them, I really wonder if these guys have just completely seared consciences. And yet they're the ones that supposedly are preaching the gospel to the masses. And I find often the people in the pews are more righteous than the people up front. And that's the state that we're in right now.
Oh, wow. That is a very powerful statement. And that is exactly the state right now, because what's happening is the people are speaking. Thousands and thousands, I would dare say near 1 million people now seeing all of these videos, getting involved in the conversation and knowing in their heart of hearts that something is very, very wrong. So especially when it comes to Daystar, especially when it comes to certain things that Joni Lamb continues to say, which you have, we're going to just see in a few minutes, you have brilliantly brought to light, like, I have my own story with her basically calling me and telling me that Susie Lamb is a pathological liar. I didn't know Susie Lamb from a hole in the wall. I just knew that those two kids who look like they tell the truth all the time and look so sincere and are very vulnerable right now, literally in hiding, because apparently you had contacted, someone at Daystar and they had to go into hiding because the Daystar Mafia, they come to their home and, vehicles, they are followed. What the heck is going on? And, as I'm watching all of this unfold, I'm thinking, but her stories are always just so blah, and all of this thing with Dr. Doug, I want to follow that first, because ever since I started talking about Doug Weiss and the timeline which your drop, when is your drop? Is it today? Is it later? I hope it's not at the same time as my show. But
it might be dropping right now, Laura-Lynn.
Oh, okay. Don't
last I
leave,
heard,
everyone. Yeah.
yeah, so it could be dropping.
Shortly.
Probably be very shortly. Yeah, if
Very
not
shortly.
before your
Listen,
story goes out.
everyone
Yeah.
has to see it. Absolutely riveting. And the thing is that since I've been doing this stuff on the exposure of Doug Weiss, I love. I have a share here. You have had. So former clients of Daystar TV personality Doug Weiss claim his counseling traumatized them. And this is absolutely, astounding, because I'm getting letter after letter after letter from people that are telling me horrific stories about Doug Weiss, his counseling. And so you've basically dropped this. And the stories are really heartbreaking, because he's dealing with people in the throes of abuse,
Yeah. Oh, this story is heartbreaking. And what seems to be the case is that these women are coming with their husbands. Their husbands are sex addicts. And with sex addiction often comes, just horrible betrayal, because they're doing things behind their back, often with prostitutes, often with pornography, often, numerous illicit affairs. And so they come for counseling to Dr. Doug. And this is supposed to be a safe place where they can process what's happened to them. And what we're hearing from so many of these women is that, one, they're brought in, and it starts with a polygraph, right? So,
Yes.
and this, this honest to Pete polygraph is associated with heart to heart. And what's really weird is that Doug's ex-wife, Lisa, still runs the counseling center and the polygraph thing, even though they're divorced. And I don't know, it just seems a little odd. But they come in for these polygraphs, and their husband takes a polygraph. In the cases that we talk to, I guess there's some situations where the woman is the sex addict. I think it's probably much more common for the man to be. And so the women we talk to, their husbands were the sex addicts. And so they come in, their husband gets polygraphed. And often during these polygraphs, things come out that they'd never heard of. And so the woman, often there's shocking revelations that come forward, but also there seems to be some issues with the polygraph itself. For example, one of the things that we found out from the women, and in fact, we even had, documentation from this one woman where they said they were going to ask about 6 questions. Well, we went to polygraphers and asked them, okay, is this normal? Is this how a polygraph test should be done? And they're saying, well, absolutely not. It should never be more than 4 questions. And every time you get more than that, more than 4 questions, you increase the likelihood that the polygraph is going to be meaningless, that it won't work. And so we found one woman saying 6. Another person told us that their husband was asked up to 10 questions. And what we're finding is that they all pass. They're all passing these polygraphs. We only talked to one person whose husband didn't pass the polygraph. And these are people that say afterwards they've actually taken tests elsewhere where their husband is asked the same questions and he fails. So again, there seems to be some questions about whether or not these polygraphs have any validity at all. But so they get these polygraph tests done. They get these shocking revelations often that come out during counseling. And what the women are saying is they're just left to deal with their trauma. So they're completely traumatized by the betrayal, that went even worse, even deeper than they thought. And according to these women, sometimes, like one woman said, like she had a look on her face. When you hear these things from your husband, there's a physical response. And she said she was shamed for having that response. And she was told, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Like, who are you to judge whether it's that bad? I mean, this is the woman who's finding out about betrayal from her spouse. Another woman said that she was, just racked with the trauma of what she's just heard. And she suspected to jump right into, okay, let's talk about how to fix the marriage. And she's not even sure at this point if she wants to fix the marriage. And so she said there was just, everything seemed much more geared to the man. And some women were even saying they were pressured to resume sexual activity with their husband after hearing about these horrible betrayals. And so we're hearing it seems like a very, it sounds like very male-centered kind of counseling where the woman feels pressured, discarded, and just harmed through the whole process. And so we're hearing, as you said, you're hearing from more and more women. We even heard from a man as well who was complaining about the counseling, but we're hearing more and more stories come in as well. I mean, there's so much, the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. We're seeing unbelievable amount of smoke here.
I don't think his marriage center is going to last. And my understanding, Lisa Weiss works there. I'm a little surprised. People have described in the background Lisa Weiss as being just very subservient, very, very sweet type, not the abuser, an abandoner that has been put forward by Doug Weiss and Jimmy Evans. But I'm a little surprised that she's not speaking more. First, we hear there's an NDA on her, a $2 million NDA that she was paid $2 million for her silence. And then Joni Lamb says that's not there. And I'm still up in the air about what's the truth on all of that.
Well, she certainly told Susie Lamb something different, according to Susie. So, I mean, again,
yeah,
I've seen this before where they say, well, it's not an NDA. It was just a separation agreement.
Yeah.
Then you look at the separation agreement
an
and you're like,
extravagant separation agreement in which Doug took, loans in order to help her to be really happy because, after all, the abuse that he took was worth paying her off for to leave, I guess. So what has happened just exactly right now looks like is Doug Weiss has, these posts are protected. So I think he's kind of shutting down his Twitter right now. I'll actually check it out. These are the concerns is that, my concern too is that Daystar didn't start having these NDAs put forward by this bizarro world, Tom Callender, which clearly Joni has him by the balls. I just had to say that. I just had to. I don't ever talk like that.
touche.
Okay. All right. Just having fun with it all. All right. But Joni's got these people, like these are the most yes people of all time. One of her board members, works for them, but the NDA basically only came in after Doug Weiss's introduction to this relationship, is I think what I'm understanding. And it seems like a lot has come with the introduction of Doug Weiss, and we're still, I don't think we have the whole story on when they started having more, not the sexting. The sexting didn't happen till October or September, according to Susie, who then went to Jimmy Evans, said, I'm a bit concerned with the way he speaks to Joni, But when they all met and how this all happened, people have a lot of concerns online about what's going on.
Well, and they should. I mean, he files for divorce 2 months after Marcus passes away. And then the comment that he, allegedly made at the funeral, which, something to the effect, again, I wasn't there, but from what Jonathan says, saying something about I had to come just to make sure that he was, in the ground, so to speak, or in the casket.
Yep, he was still there.
I mean, that's so creepy, that comment. But then again, files for divorce, and he's granted the divorce in a very short amount of time. I mean, he files in January, it's granted by May. I mean, that's wow. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. And then within days, and this will come out in the podcast we're releasing, within days, Jonathan and Susie are finding out from Joni that, she's texting him. She's in a texting relationship with him. She's running out of a restaurant giddy because she got a call from him. And this is in June, just days after the divorce is granted. And some really weird things is that in July is when Doug and Lisa supposedly go for counseling to, one last ditch effort to put their marriage back together. And they're already divorced. He's already engaging in all this, relationship with Joni. And now she's going to Denise Boggs for counseling, Lisa Weiss and Doug Weiss. I mean, just bizarre, just absolutely bizarre how this is all playing out. And then, and we reported this in our article, Doug's divorced again in May. He doesn't go public about it till February of the next year. So we're talking, 8-9 months.
Yeah, I think we have that clip of your drop today.
Okay.
We get a little sneak preview, everybody.
All right.
Take a look at this one.
Now, this just recently came out, and we kind of put this together recently. But in October, there's a first payment of $37,000 for this resort where they're going to be honeymooning. And again, we'll get to that because there's a whole scandal with that because she uses her company credit card for that. But they supposedly didn't start dating till August after he gets a show. And then by October, they're putting down a down payment for their honeymoon. Doug doesn't supposedly propose to her until 2 months later, December 31st of that same year. So this is extremely weird. But there's other weird things on here, too, that you told me about. February 8th is when Doug announces his divorce from Lisa Weiss. Okay, remember, she got divorced, and I've got the documentation. Lisa and Doug divorced on May 31st. He's announcing it on February 8th, 2023. I'm guessing the people that are going to him as a marriage counselor, do they even know this whole time that he's divorced?
They don't, and that's what I had a big problem with, is that there was that deception. So for well over a year, he counseled patients at his counseling center under the guise that he had a great marriage. And so that's deceptive. I mean, if you're going through a divorce, I think you should disclose that to your patients. And so, yeah, it was over a year.
And then, as I understand it, just a few days later, on February 10th, 2023, Joni announces her engagement. So he's announcing on February 8th that he just got divorced. She's announcing 2 days later that she's engaged.
And that's what's so crazy is I think that's the only reason he did it then is because he realized Joni's about to announce her engagement, but he hasn't even disclosed to any of his employees that he's even divorced. So it's almost like he was forced to do it. He waited to the last possible moment before he did.
And something happened then too, where one of the Daystar employees put something out on like social media, right? Hey, Joni's engaged, and that kind of caused a little bit of a brouhaha.
Exactly, because he had just notified his staff 2 days before, and then 2 days after that, they find out that she's engaged. Because we were doing, I think it was an all-staff meeting, and at the end of the meeting, my mother basically showed a picture of her and Doug, the engagement photo, to our staff. And then somebody in our staff, just totally innocently, I guess, had texted somebody up at Heart to Heart Counseling Center. And then it got out to everyone at Heart to Heart Counseling Center that this man who they found out just got divorced is now engaged to Joni Lamb. So it created this big stir to where I remember my mom was saying, like, Doug had to put out fires because it caused such a disruption.
That is just one epic clip from Julie Royce's drop today. You have got to see this whole thing. Julie, you went into this, you just lasered in on basically the lies. Before we move on to you and Joni, because you really did focus a lot on, well, you also talked about, I mean, you covered everything. Let's put it that way. I just want to say that Dr. Doug Weiss has indeed put his Twitter on, and we can just share this, JT, if you have it in view. He has indeed, as of, I believe, very recently, because people are checking in, to see if he has something fascinating to say. And so these posts are now protected. There is nothing but hate coming towards anyone that is posting, whether it's Rachel Lamb. I mean, you can't find a good thing about her anywhere, especially since yesterday, a whistleblower has revealed that she is just so abusive to work with. And that is not the first time. I have other whistleblowers coming forward to say that working with that family and that Joni is very scary to work with, but do you know what? They all say Rachel is even worse to work with. And so something very dark is happening in that organization. But Doug's out for the count, I guess, on X.
Wow, isn't that something?
It really is. It really is.
And this shows, really what getting the truth out there can do. This is accountability, and it's coming from grassroots, right? It's from the ground up. And this is exciting to me because, to me, again, what I see is the people of God are saying enough. They're saying enough. And the powerful people, the people with platforms, they're not doing hardly anything. They're not saying anything. It is the groundswell of the public.
Yeah. Everyone's like, mum's the word. Oh, Daystar's falling. Oh no, but programmers are seeming to be pulling their, their programs off, but very, very quiet on the side of saying anything out loud about what's happening right now. And maybe they just don't know what to say, because in all fairness, the Joni Lamb that we see on television or they have ever met is not what we are now uncovering. And so you had another, let's just respond to what we just saw here. The timelines of would be very shocking to Heart as well as to Daystar, that, Doug Weiss, who's been on our show for the last 10 years and counseled with them. Now, there's something about the counseling with them that you kind of discovered about Doug counseling Joni and Marcus.
Well, we didn't include this in our article, and the reason was because I heard this initially from Jonathan, and so I went to Jonathan and I said, where did you hear this? And what Jonathan told us he heard was that Doug Weiss had counseled Marcus and Joni following their, people are calling this an affair that Marcus had. I just want to say something about that. The person that Marcus had a sexual relationship with for 7 years was a subordinate of his. he is a spiritual leader to her. He considered Daystar his church, and he ran it very much that way, from what I understand. So he's a spiritual leader to this person, and she is under him, not just spiritually, but she's under him, as an employee. This is not this is like classic, and a lot of people don't know much about this. And if you've never heard this term, I encourage you, go to our YouTube page and look up the podcast I did with Dr. David Pooler, who's going to be at our conference, by the way. Fascinating. I mean, this man is an expert on adult clergy sexual abuse. He's a Baylor professor, done incredible research on it. But people have to understand, because of that power differential, when Marcus had this relationship with someone under him, he had way too much power for that person to give consent in kind of the way that we understand consent. And so, and we saw this with Mike Bickle at the International House of Prayer. He would have prophecies about people, and, he would say that God told him his wife was going to die and he was going to marry this person. Again, I don't know that Marcus did anything that wicked or manipulative, but it's not okay. I mean, it's not okay for a doctor to have a relationship with a client. It's not okay for psychologists to have a relationship with a client. It's not okay for a pastor to have a relationship with a congregant or an employee, especially an illicit one. And we need to start recognizing that. But anyway, so on after this, what I would call sexual misconduct, even adult clergy sexual abuse, after 7 years of this, Joni and Marcus go to counseling. And the counseling, supposedly, what Jonathan heard was from Doug Weiss. We sent a lot of questions to Dr. Doug Weiss, asking him for answers. He didn't respond to most of them, but this one he emphatically denied. And he said, "This is an absolute lie. I did not provide any professional counseling for Marcus or Joni Lamb." So he completely denied it. But if they did, that's American Psychological Association frowns upon dating past clients.
And Rodney Howard-Browne has come up a couple of times because, in one sense, he was trying to tell Johnny and Susie the truth, that this was an illegitimate marriage before God in his belief, and that he would not have anything to do with Daystar if Doug was going to be in this relationship with Joni. He was absolutely going to stand against it from a biblical perspective, unlike Jimmy Evans. So Rodney Howard-Browne seems to have some strength in that way, to be one of the people that would talk about it. Now, Robert Morris had basically said, "Yes, I don't agree with what your mother Joni is doing with Dr. Doug, but don't uncover me," And then Joni basically knew already that some woman was going to, put out all the information and the goods on Robert Morris and take him down. And she knew that, but she kept having Robert Morris shows on her network, and until it came out, and then suddenly she unceremoniously took Robert Morris off the air, took his show down off Daystar, making a real point of that. But Rodney Howard-Browne, keeps kind of coming in. Then he's like good friends with Marcus Rogers. Marcus Rogers like, "High five, I know it'll be okay with Rodney it's okay, y'all. I'm gonna, talk to Rodney. Everything's gonna be fine." And I don't know. He doesn't speak for himself. Just all these people keep bringing him up.
Yeah, maybe Rodney would come on your show, or he's welcome to come on my podcast. I would love to interview him, find out what he knows. I think it's time that he does that he speaks publicly about what he knew and what he saw and what he witnessed at Daystar. I think that would be
even if
a
just
service.
to put, I like that, Julie. Even if to speak of, because Doug Weiss is basically calling him a liar. So maybe he'd like to set, that record straight. We'd both welcome that, wouldn't we? We'd both welcome that opportunity to speak with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, I've put out to Joni. I would love to interview her as well. I wish she would let me interview her, because I've got a lot of questions. But I think she will only have the interviews with those who will give her softballs, not those who will actually ask follow-up questions, as I know you or I would.
I have a feeling you wouldn't be doing a Marcus Rogers interview. I like, in your drop today, you're like, he's going on about this blackmail, the blackmail letter that supposedly Jonathan and Susie, sent.
Oh, yeah.
And he doesn't know about the letter. It's so old. You've reported on it like, so long ago.
Yeah.
And like he
Yeah.
did no homework to do that interview.
No. He said, I'd like to read that letter. And I'm like, well, you could have read it. I published it. It's right there. If you'd done your homework, you would know that that's been published. And you'd also know that what she's telling you isn't the whole story.
It's not the whole story. One thing that's coming out in your drop today is Joni Lamb and her multifaceted way of communicating in order to get people to believe her side of the story. We already showed that clip of where she thinks that she's in 3 different places.
Right.
I have a
Which,
feeling.
by the way, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
The one thing that I don't think anybody said or talked about is the fact that she's saying she didn't cover up a crime. All right. Or she's saying that she didn't cover up what should have been investigated, right? That she knew that he was innocent. Again, she was not in the room. So when she describes these things, Pete was looking out the window, it was all innocent, everything. How does she know that? And the fact that we know that she was in the basement and she's still doing this shows that she's still covering up. She's doing the very thing in those interviews that she denies doing. And that is basically covering up. What she should be saying is, you know what? I wasn't in the room. Pete told me this. Rachel told me this, and that needs to be investigated. I mean, that's what she should be saying. Instead, she is only giving one side, which shows that she's sold out to this side. And again, it's covering up right now. She's doing the very thing that she's claiming she didn't do. She's doing it now.
And I just can't fathom the coldness. The defense of Pete over her granddaughter and her son and her daughter-in-law, who have a very serious concern. Even if you think it's wrong, that you wouldn't go to the end of the world. And instead, it's reported, she told Denise Boggs, she said, no, we're going to handle it ourselves. Never mind. We don't want clearance from y'all. We'll take care of it. And they promptly told the kids that he was cleared. And none of that was true. And I talked to Miss Denise Boggs just today, as well as Debbie Leonard, and they confirmed never, ever, ever did they say he was cleared. And Rachel continues to have missteps and lies on this. And why would Joni and Marcus have told them he was cleared? Like, this sent them into a very bad direction.
No, and you really get the impression that Daystar had become an idol to them. It had become the most important thing. I mean, when you're willing to sacrifice your granddaughter on the altar of public opinion, because you're afraid that this might get out and this won't look good for the family, that shows you've got some idolatry going on. But even, I'm a mother. I've got 2 grown sons, a grown daughter, and, there are times when you have conflict, with your adult children. I can't fathom, even if I was in the right, which I don't think she was in the right, but even if I'm in the right, like say with Jonathan and this whole thing with, he wouldn't read the card because it was praising her marriage, and Jonathan and Susie felt like that was a violation of their convictions. I mean, I can't imagine as a mother, like if that were my son, I would just, even if I thought I was right, it's not worth losing a relationship over. Like I would give up my career for my kids any day. Like, I mean, this doesn't mean that much to me. I mean, I'm almost 60 years old, What I care about
agree.
is my children. I mean,
Yes.
I can't fathom that. Like, I would never, ever, ever sacrifice my relationship with my children for my job.
I know.
It's just, it's breathtaking to me. I mean, I as a mother, I can't understand that. It's just mind numbing to me.
It really is. It really is. And that was the coldness that I was met with the night that Joni called me when my first broadcast was going out. I just expected Joni from TV, and what came out, and she didn't even realize it. Like, she went into her alternate world. And I do think something's wrong. Just the way she communicates, she's very shifty. She can't tell the truth. And I think that Doug and her unfortunately are showing a very dark side of humanity, and they have found each other. They have found each other to make their way forward. And I think the honeymoon might be over. That $100,000, honeymoon that we just don't quite know if she's paid back or not. I don't know. Maybe she has paid it back. I think you talk about that on your drop today, so let's not spoil that. But we're watching a colossal, epic meltdown of a big ministry. And this is a very precarious position for me. And this puts all of us in this seat of going, well, we've got to know the truth, and something very wrong has happened here.
Very wrong. Very wrong. But, it didn't happen overnight. I think there were things happening for a long time that people weren't noticing. Say, for example, I mean, even when Marcus was alive, and I know people love Marcus, but I mean, my personal opinion, after that 7-year sexual misconduct / abuse, he was disqualified from ministry. He should not have been doing ministry. Their board, they had 3 people on their board, a mother, a son, and one other longtime friend. That is not a board, friends. Look at the boards of the organizations you're involved in. Look at the boards that you give money to. I mean, it should have a majority of independent members. And independent means they're not related by blood. They're not employees, so their boss isn't there on the board. It means that they have the freedom to hold the people accountable. There should be at least 5 to 7 people on those boards. And I mean, we have Tom Callender making decisions solo because Jonathan can't say anything because he's a family member, and Joni is the person he's making decisions about, like, granting $100,000 for their honeymoon. I mean, these are the things that were happening. I think too, some of the programs on Daystar, and I'm probably going to be stepping on some toes right now, but Kenneth Copeland, I mean, this is prosperity gospel. This is, put a coin in and you'll get a bigger coin back. This is, God told me I need a multi-million-dollar jet. This is, his church is like a studio. He doesn't really pastor a church. I mean, this is goofiness, people. This is not the gospel. We've sold out a long time ago for mammon, and we are looking the other way. Some of these programs, some of these people that are being platformed, we should have nothing to do with. In fact, not only nothing to do with, we should be calling out their gospel is a false gospel. Prosperity gospel is a false gospel. It is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ lived a poverty life. The disciples lived a poverty life. And I'm not saying you can't be rich, but I'm saying God doesn't promise us wealth and riches. In fact, he said, if anyone would follow after me, he has to take up his cross and deny himself and follow me. That's what being a Christian means. It means that you give your life in service to your King.
Amen. Not
he gives you everything you want so that you can satisfy your every whim and desire, which will make you a child for life. You'll never grow up. That is not what God promised us. And so, like, when I look at some of these ministries, I say it's been the frog in the kettle for a long time. It's been the heat has been turned up slowly. And we got used to things that were wicked and calling them okay. And they're not okay.
They're not okay. And that might be why Rodney Howard-Browne, I know he is into the prosperity gospel, and I know, and he's proud of it actually, because, he's spoken to one of my dear friends about that, and he's all about that. And if you don't believe in that, he can pretty much diss you, but I guess he's got a pretty good prosperity gospel. But a lot of the people that attend churches, they're really trying to make life work on incomes that are, not sufficient. Yeah. And then we've got the economy and everything that's happened to us in the last 4 years. And these people continue to teach things, and they're living it at the expense.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, man.
They're exploiting those people that can't afford to give. And they're thinking if they give, they're going to be cured of cancer. If they give, they're not going to have financial troubles anymore, because this is a man of God, and this man of God said it. Well, that man of God is twisting scripture. That man of God is manipulating you. That man of God is being used of the devil to do something he shouldn't be doing. And it's just wrong. It's evil. It's so many things done in the name of God. I think so often, I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan. I don't know. Are you a C.S. Lewis fan, Laura-Lynn?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So the last battle, my favorite book, the last in the Chronicles of Narnia. But the thing that's so heartbreaking in this story, if you haven't read it, folks, if you haven't read the whole Chronicles of Narnia, you're just culturally deprived. Like, you have to read this. But the last battle, what is so heartbreaking is that this ape who's evil, gets somebody to impersonate Aslan. Aslan is the Christ figure. And friends, that's what I think of so often when I see what's happening in the Christian world right now. We have people impersonating Aslan. We have people wearing costumes and pretending to be men of God, and they're not. And these are the people who are perverting the gospel, and they're leading people astray. And God is fed up. Like we have no fear of God. Do we think that we can do this and get away with it? You can't do this and get away. We serve a holy God. We serve a holy God, and he's patient, but he has a point where his bowl of wrath is full. And I think his bowl of wrath is full right now. I think that's what we're seeing. And he's had it. He has had it. And if he didn't spare his own people, the people of Israel, if he didn't spare them, but sent them to exile in Babylon because of their sin, do we think he's going to spare us? Do you think we care? You think he cares about our PR? Do you think he cares about our reputation? He doesn't. He cares about his. He cares about his. And we better start caring about it too. Because if we don't, we're going to be humiliated publicly, just like all of these ministries, just like what's happening, person after person after person. He's exposing it. He's exposing it. It's not me. I say this all the time. I'm not that good of a journalist. I'm not. Stuff gets laid in my lap because God is exposing stuff. He is doing it. And it's about time that people start fearing God, because they just don't right now.
Amen. I read that scripture yesterday. May he be your fear. May he be your dread. And we've lost that. And somehow I think it's easy to lose the fear of God when you've got airplanes and big homes. Like, that's why it's so hard for a rich man to get into the kingdom. Like the camel going through the eye of the gate there. It's hard because, man, you've got everything. And so your mind, you maybe think you are invincible. Before I let you go, could we just look at one more clip from your drop today and get your thoughts on that? Because this is epic, and I don't want the audience to miss having a little taste of this. Take a look.
Joni actually made a statement, and she made this charge again of blackmail or extortion. I forget exactly how she put it, but she left this paragraph out. She left out, too, that you were responding to 13 points. This is your letter, October 3rd. Susie would never share and does not possess recordings of private conversations with Joni. Susie is owed a letter fully reinstating her to all of her previous roles at Daystar. During the meeting with Joni and Jimmy Evans, Joni purported to fire Susie and promptly removed her from all appearances at Daystar. This was petty, harmful, and a disappointing action. This is the statement that was in the Daystar statement on November 25th, just this paragraph that came next. We remain willing to put this episode behind us. However, we also require security, transparency, and certainty about our futures at Daystar. To achieve this goal, we would suggest that Joni, Daystar, and ourselves enter into a new contract that clearly spells out my future role as president of Daystar. Restrict the ability of Joni or any other officer or director from taking actions adverse to our employment without good cause, to be clearly defined, and without prior approval of a majority of the board of directors. In exchange for the agreement contemplated above, we will agree not to use, disseminate, or otherwise publish any and all audio recordings that could be harmful or embarrassing to Daystar, Joni, or our family.
Two things. Number one, where did this all begin? Because remember how she was telling Marcus that we hired a lawyer? Jonathan one day went to work, normal, innocent day, and he was ambushed in a meeting with Tom Callender, Arnold, the board, and their lawyer, John Lynch. in that ambush meeting, they extorted him. They said, "You're doing extortion." They used that word because Jonathan recorded that. You have the recording. And when he came home, he was so rattled. And we were sitting there like, all we had ever asked for was to follow our biblical convictions. How does that word extortion work? We had to get some. They pulled a lawyer in. So they can use lawyers, but we can't. Thank God, Gene, we met this lawyer who stepped up and told us exactly what to do. So when we explained our situation, he said, okay, so because you didn't read that card, Susie is no longer doing the green room. I had been fired. And which, by the way, she throws in that they paid me for months. Why did they pay me for months? I didn't ask for it. I was fired. I don't control that. So she keeps pinning that on me, but we did nothing. What do you want me to do? Block. Block. I don't know what to do. Anyway, so Gene, the lawyer we started talking to, brilliant man, he told us, okay, so if her taking away the green room and her TV appearances is a direct punishment for not reading that card, now if they're saying that they're going to let you not praise her marriage, now if they're saying that, the only way to move forward in a peaceful, good, God-honoring way is to remove the punishment that was put in place. So I should be given a letter of apology for, taking me away from the green room and taking us off TV. And she had threatened, Marcus had already written a letter before that Jonathan would be Joni's successor after Joni. So the two things that she threatened and took away, they said you should just reinstate. So that's why this legal people helped us write this letter.
Yeah, exactly. So our attorney was the one that wrote it, and he obviously, would not write something that would be considered blackmail or extortion. Again, this is written as an assurance of peace. As far as my mother in the conversation with Marcus Rogers said that it was an ironclad agreement that I could, I was president regardless of whatever happens, but that's not what the letter said. The letter said that I could not be terminated without just cause and without a majority vote of the board of directors. So if I just went wayward or lost the ability to lead or something happened, the board of directors could vote me out from having that role. But as long as I stayed in line, this ensured my father's wishes would be followed, which again, the only reason we asked for that is because Susie was terminated and I was almost terminated for not reading a card approving her marriage. So we could get fired on a whim. We wanted to make sure that could not happen.
And this then becomes a bone of contention for the board meeting in November 16th, 2023. We have published that board meeting in 2 parts. And I've had so many people reach out, just shocked. Again, just shocked. Like, this is just unbelievable to me, the way Jonathan has been treated at this organization.
It is so shocking how Jonathan has been treated at this organization.
Yes.
And the truth of what you were revealing there with Marcus Rogers having no idea, again, that this letter was much longer than Joni likes to pull out a little piece of a letter without context.
Yeah, well, and it just reminds me that the best lies are half truths, right? So that's exactly what she did. She pulled out part of this letter and said, see, it's blackmail. He's saying, if you don't give me a contract, then I'm going to go public with these recordings. When again, not just was there more context in that letter, but the letter came in response, specifically in response to these 13 stipulations that Joni had for basically peace in the relationship. And 2 of the points on there dealt with basically destroying the recordings, because obviously she saw that this would be pretty damning if they got out. And so this was, again, an olive branch that basically Jonathan was saying, hey, if you give me, and again, what he's asking for is very reasonable, to have some sort of contract and that you can't fire me without cause. I mean, that's pretty reasonable. Although it would also require a majority of the board, which again, the board is his mother and Tom Callender. So I wouldn't have felt very, very secure with that kind of a contract, given who's on the board, and it's just basically yes people for Joni. But again, very reasonable kind of letter, but again, pulled out and made to be something that it's not going to be. And this is why doing your homework is really important. I mean, it's interesting. Marcus reached out to me in the midst of this, and said, wow, I really wasn't prepared for this. And I wrote him back, and I didn't mean to be too hard on him, but I was kind of hard on him because I was like, there's no excuse for not preparing for an interview. I mean, this is way too important. This is way too serious for you not to prepare, to not know what you're doing, which he didn't. He had no idea what he was doing. He had no idea. He had not done his homework. He didn't know. And so he was able to be led astray. Although I'm really wondering now, because he had enough knowledge even afterwards then to go on with that horrific video that he put up saying horrible, dishonoring things about Jonathan and Susie, who have been through so much.
Abusive. It was
Oh,
an abusive
horribly.
video. Like
It was.
I didn't know that he had a background where he's had abuse and he's had charges
Right.
or a wife, and I had no
Mhm.
idea. But I was driving. I had to go to an errand, and I'm like, Lord, what is Marcus Rogers doing? And he said
Yeah.
it's abuse, and I'm like, he's an abusive man. And then I
100%.
hear what happened, and I'm so sorry. I pray that he walks away from all of that. But he's probably got a past and things that he's been dealing with, so we forgive him.
Mhm.
But he was so nasty to Susie, who does not deserve it. This whole Potiphar's wife
Mhm.
allegation.
Mm.
What?
It was insane.
I hope that Rodney Howard Brown, whom he looks up to, brings him in the office and has a little talk with him about what he's done to someone
It's-
else. That would be a good use of the leadership of Rodney Howard Brown in this man's life.
What's just so bad is that so many of these preachers are spiritually abusive. They twist the scriptures and use them in such bad, horrific ways that it's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, he should be disqualified from ministry for that. He shouldn't be in ministry. I mean, if you look into his background, he's not above reproach. Marcus Rogers should be done. And this is the downside of the internet, right? Is that if you can get followers, if you can be entertaining enough and get enough followers, you can have a platform whether you deserve it or not. When you have no accountability whatsoever, when there's no church that would necessarily hire you because you shouldn't be hired, you're not worthy of that platform. And Marcus Rogers is not. He really isn't. I mean, and we saw how he behaved. I wish he would lose his platform, not because I want that. He shouldn't have it for his own good, for everybody's good.
It's been harmful. What he's done is harmful, and
No.
many people turned against him. He had to turn, like the comments were just so, the people are speaking is what keeps coming out. And I just want to give you final word to say, but the people are speaking. This is the rise of the people, much like in the
Yeah.
United States with how the Democrats couldn't buy off legacy media enough to kind of switch everything around. Now the people speak, and the people are rising. They get a voice, and they can be differing voices, but it's not one megaphone telling everyone what they have to do. The church is no longer having the control that they once had. And all they have to do, if there's some kind of crazy situation going down, every pastor should know Julie Royce will probably expose you if the people will speak. Julie Royce will expose you. And after her, Laura-Lynn Tyler Thompson will also help you to be exposed, because I'm just not going to put up with it. I had it in my past growing up, the lies. I was out with my brother the other night. We said we grew up in secrecy. We grew up with abuse going on right under our noses that we didn't know for 30 years. And our friends were hurt. And I'm done. Like, I am so done with it. And that's why I admire what you do. I know you take heat for what you do, but it's important what you do. My final thing is, what is your perception now as you look at the totality of what you're seeing with Joni Lamb? My concern is, I can find no truth in her, and I cannot respect her any longer. I cannot see that she should be running anything. And I'm so appalled by her behavior in every way, her half-truths or blatant lies. All of it just leaves me with a sick feeling. And I'm just wondering, you've done, I think, the most work on this file and have been involved the longest. What do you have to say on that?
Well, I think we have to recognize that it's not a ministry. It's certainly not a church the way it's classified by the IRS. It is a family business. It's a business. And we need to come to terms with that. So if there's a family business, People don't resign from their family business because they're exposed. They try to make the business work despite the exposure. And so that's what we're seeing happen. She is going to run this thing into the ground if she has to, because she owns it, she controls it, and it's not run at all like a nonprofit should be run. And in fact, it couldn't. If it weren't a religious nonprofit, they would have to file 990s, and people would see how much money, which, by the way, I'm going to be publishing a piece soon, which will say how much money Joni Lamb makes. But again, this is a family business. There are tons of ministries out there right now saying they're ministries, they're family businesses. This is not how ministries work. This is not how the church works. You know, read the New Testament. My biggest thing to people today is please be like the Bereans who went back, even when the Apostle Paul was speaking. They didn't just take everything he said at face value. They went back and they studied their scriptures to see if what he was saying was true. Friends, the reason these ministries continue to thrive is because we don't know our Bibles. We don't know our scriptures. We can't see when we're being deceived. We can't see. We've been, hoodwinked by these ideas of this Moses model that the leader is so godly. They hear directly from God, and we can't question, the Lord's anointed. That's an Old Testament standard. If we knew our Bibles better, we would know to throw out a lot of the stuff that comes our way, and we would know how to look for accountability in these organizations, but we don't. And so, that's just my admonition. I've been so proud, and, at the same time that I'm saying we need to do better, the people that have risen up in this case, Daystar people have gotten it. They are speaking out and they're speaking boldly. And so I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud of what you're doing. And I'm proud that you guys could see truth from error and discern truth from error. But I think across the board, there just needs to be more of that in the body of Christ. And I think we just need to see this in the body of Christ. And I do think Jesus, it's kind of, what was that? Jesus called and he wants his church back. I think that's what's happening. He wants his church back.
Right.
And he's gonna get it. He's gonna get it because he's
Jesus
a lot more
called and
powerful
he
than
wants
we are.
his church back. Amen. The true people, that love God. And wow, the discerners are sure out there, and they are loving your
Yeah, they
work
are.
right now. I'm pretty sure that you're going to a whole new level of exposure with your organization, because I've really come to understand how important it is. And I'm just going to be sharing your stuff out nonstop, Julie. And I thank you for heeding the voice of God and not being a coward. You truly have the fear of the Lord. And I love that. And I find a camaraderie and a sistership in that. And I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, likewise, I feel like you're a kindred spirit and you're a truth seeker. And it's just great to be on with you and to get to know you a little bit. And I hope our paths cross a lot more in the
I
future.
think they will somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here, but keep going. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful lady. Wow. That was epic, wasn't it? All right, we're going to close really fast. I do want to say I have just a scripture to share with you, and I have just some closing thoughts in all of it. Often we put forward sort of some things that we think are important right now, and I've kind of dropped the ball the last few weeks as we've been dealing with all of this, but we have been right at the cusp of telling everybody that we have a real problem with our financial world right now. And I got this text from my friend who's traveling. She's been on a cruise and she's traveling through Europe and whatnot. And they just had to pay 175 Canadian dollars for a breakfast. She's like, it wasn't even great. It was $175. She says, our money is not worth anything. And so, they want to get us. We don't have a gold standard. Hopefully some things will come into play that help North America, the US and Canada to have a better economy. But our money is dropping because it's not backed properly, and it has been mishandled and it has been abused, and it's cracking. That financial system is cracking. And so we do recommend gold and silver, and Sun City Gold and Silver is who we trust. And they are absolutely incredible. And Steve Merrill, we like to deal with him. sovereignize@protonmail.com. You can call, ask anything you like. If you have saved your nest egg, like I'll never forget my friend telling me how her and her husband, they'd saved $200,000 and it's sitting in the bank and she's so proud. I'm like, oh, like, get it out of there. Do something with it. Buy property, buy gold and silver. But, you know, just sitting there with money that is literally, depleting in its value moment by moment. Don't do it. So gold and silver. For any of you who want ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, be sure to have just send an email to mia@sozohealth@proton.me. They can help you with stuff like that, because you can get that, ivermectin over the counter in Mexico and Costa Rica, but for some reason it just really clears up your body. Ever since I used ivermectin, I have not had my lupus symptoms again in the same way. And so that was in 2021. And it's been 3 years of not having my hands all swollen and all of that, because I was diagnosed with lupus back in 2006. And I'm just clear. I'm clear of it. And what I took was that. So I'm not saying it'll work for everyone, but that is the bottom line. Our website is Laura-Lynn.tv. Thank you very much for those of you who are appreciating our truth telling. Me and JT, we just call ourselves a Ma and Pa shop. We don't have a big mega ministry at all. And should God ever grant one to us, we hope that we would handle it with the fear of the Lord, and that many good works would be done through that. But right now, we're not looking to be a mega ministry. We're just actually looking to keep the lights on. And so for those of you who appreciate the truth and the price that we paid to be sitting here speaking to you today, there is a website, Laura-Lynn.tv. You're able to donate. We will also be able to help you at the 1-800 number across North America if you'd like to give in American funds. And if you'd like a tax receipt, because it is almost tax time, everybody. It's the end of the year, and you can get a tax receipt from us in Canada. We can get you a tax receipt in the United States if that's what you would value. We'll be able to get that for you. And so just let us know. Call our 1-800 number. Contact us at my email, and we will set that up. Most of all, we just thank you for your prayers, because actually it's been, I would say, one of the hardest seasons of my professional career in dealing with this. The weight is very big, and it's different. It's not, I don't know how to describe it, but the weight, the spiritual weight that I feel of communicating and telling the truth at this hour when so many will not, has been a shocking time for me. So I thank God that he's been with me, and I thank you for being with me. And I love you very much. Thank you for praying for us. I want to leave you right now with Psalms 101. And it says, I'm going to start in verse 2. I will be careful to lead a blameless life. When will you come to me? I will conduct the affairs of my house with a blameless heart. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. I hate what faithless people do. I will have no part in it. The perverse of heart shall be far from me. I will have nothing to do with what is evil. Whoever slanders their neighbor in secret, I will put to silence. Whoever has haughty eyes and a proud heart, I will not tolerate. My eyes will be on the faithful in the land, that they may dwell with me. The one whose walk is blameless will minister to me. I thought that was fascinating, because I was listening to this passage on Bible Gateway this morning. I often, if I'm awakened early, I put the Word of God on. First of all, so I'll probably fall asleep again because it's so soothing. But if the devil's trying to bug me with thoughts and worries and crisis and stress, I listen to the Word, because the devil sure doesn't want to hear it. So I put it on so he can hear and run along. And Psalms 101 just played, and I just went, wow, listening to this. And when it says there that the one whose walk is blameless will minister to me, I think that means that the people who are around you, if there's a ministry You're looking for those whose walk is blameless to walk with you, not those who are, doing wrong and potentially, even having criminal acts. Like, we don't want them around us. And sometimes when you're in an organization, you have to make sure that you're walking under the authority and the power of an organization that is godly, that has a blameless life. Wow, like this is such a huge standard, to have a blameless life, that those in a ministry or outside of the ministry, those in your life, that you will not tolerate those that are evil. Wow. No one who practices deceit will dwell in my house. No one who speaks falsely will stand in my presence. Every morning I will put to silence all the wicked in the land. May God help us to begin to see that it is His call on our lives which causes us to rise up against what we see that is evil. It's not your own heart. Some people, very few, they'll say, oh, this is just all gossip. This is not gossip. This is of such importance that we understand that whoever ministers before the Lord would have an accountability factor for how they live, who they are. And that our accountability would be that we would not walk with the unfaithful. We would not sit in the seat of the scornful. We would not walk with those who have deception at their core. We would not support those who are unwilling to live a God-fearing life and to walk with integrity, purity. That we would not walk with liars. It's huge. But the Word of God says that the righteous are bold as a lion. And how do you get bold? You walk rightly before your God and you expose the evil works of darkness. God bless. Thanks for joining me. It's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.laura-lynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.